Welcome to Foxtail, where stories come to life. Thank you for joining us on this storytelling adventure. If you're enjoying our tales, please like, comment, and subscribe to help us create more magical stories for you. His Majesty decreed our marriage, and I was forced to marry into Blackwood Manor as a second wife. I heard that my future mother-in-law was harsh and cruel. My sisters-in-law were difficult to deal with, and my husband had an extremely arrogant concubine who even drove the previous first wife to death out of anger. All the respectable families in the capital avoided this household like the plague. Before stepping into the wedding sedan, my mother gripped my hands tightly, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter, you must be very careful, but don't be too heavy-handed with your in-laws. Otherwise, your father and I will have difficulty explaining to His Majesty." On the wedding night, I wore the phoenix crown that weighed as heavy as 1,000 pounds, sitting upright on the wedding bed. Thinking of my parents' instructions before leaving, I patiently sat for 2 full hours without moving an inch, closing my eyes to rest. The maids who knew my temperament well didn't dare utter a word of advice. Late into the night, suddenly a servant came to report. "Concubine Vivian has had a heart attack. The young master has already gone to her courtyard." I slowly opened my eyes. This again. Can't they come up with something new? The old woman who came to report the news secretly observed my expression, as if waiting for a good show. They were clearly testing me deliberately. On the wedding day, a concubine dared to disregard propriety like this. Could it be that even the young master doesn't understand the rules? Even if the young master doesn't understand, could it be that the old lord and lady also don't understand? Want to sit back and watch tigers fight? Not a chance. Actually, for this situation, the experts in inner court battles have long had a standard response: first, use emotion to move him, use propriety to advise the husband, then send someone to invite the imperial physician to examine the concubine, making the husband feel touched and ashamed. Second, say nothing at all, and the next morning find a way to report this matter to His Majesty, letting him reprimand Blackwood Manor for daring to disrespect the imperial marriage decree, conveniently stepping on the concubine to vent anger. But tonight I'm tired and not in the mood to play cat and mouse with them. "Azure, Pearl, come here." The 2 maids bowed respectfully in response. I leisurely tapped my fingers on the table, a cold smile flashing in my eyes. "One concubine Vivian arrives here. She won't be able to leave the young master, and the young master must stay here tonight. So bring her over as well, to watch us consummate our marriage together." The next morning, the entire Blackwood Manor was buzzing with rumors that the newly wedded young madam was a fierce person who completely disregarded that concubine Vivian was the young master's most beloved concubine, crying pitifully. She brazenly ordered people to carry her into the bridal chamber, right in front of the young master. Young Master Marcus Wood was so angry he went mad, pointing at the bride and cursing. "Are you insane?" The young madam's expression didn't change at all. She directed the servants to lock the chamber doors and courtyard gates tightly. Despite the young master's thunderous rage and violent door pounding, no one was allowed to leave. All the servants sent by the lord and lady were blocked outside the courtyard. Facing their questioning, the gatekeeper calmly replied, "Could it be that the lord and lady don't want the young master and young madam to consummate their marriage? One concubine causing trouble isn't enough. Now even the elders of the household want to interfere. Or is it that Blackwood Manor is dissatisfied with His Majesty's marriage decree and is deliberately trying to sabotage it?" 3 sharp questions in succession left everyone speechless. Those who had been hiding behind watching the show now frantically worried. I'll let you all watch to your heart's content. That night, the entire Blackwood Manor couldn't sleep, but I slept very well, waiting until dawn before slowly waking up. My spirits were high, my complexion rosy. Only when I woke up did the gatekeepers open the doors. Concubine Vivian and Marcus Blackwood fled as if chased by demons, running straight out without stopping. Last night Marcus kept cursing non-stop, saying, "I've committed the 7 grounds for divorce. Tomorrow I'll definitely report to His Majesty to divorce you." Finding it too bothersome, I had people move him to the small bed in concubine Vivian's adjoining room, originally meant for servants on night duty, and thoughtfully instructed the 2 of them to keep the noise down. "Don't disturb my sleep." Marcus was so angry he nearly exploded, while Vivian cried without tears. Unfortunately, all their servants were blocked outside the door by me. They called to heaven but heaven didn't answer, called to earth but earth didn't respond. They could only endure until the next morning. Before leaving, Marcus trembled with rage, grinding his teeth as he threw out one sentence. "Sophia Sterling, you're really something, really something." I laughed. Of course I'm really something, do I need him to tell me? After leisurely dressing and finishing breakfast, I prepared to pay respects to my mother-in-law and sisters-in-law. According to custom, husband and wife should go together, but unfortunately Marcus didn't want to go with me, so I had to go alone to the main hall. My mother-in-law sat in the seat of honor, her face as black as the bottom of a pot, sternly scolding. "Sterling woman, you also come from a noble family, why do you act so outrageously, lacking in womanly virtue? Not even married for a full day, and you dare to coerce your husband, even threatening and intimidating your in-laws." The sisters-in-law around looked on with curiosity and gloating, watching me as if enjoying a good play. On the first day as a daughter-in-law and already despised by husband and mother-in-law, in their eyes I'm already finished. But what does mother-in-law mean by this? What I did yesterday, wasn't it precisely to preserve the dignity and reputation of Blackwood Manor? If outsiders knew the young master didn't consummate the marriage, but ran to a concubine's courtyard instead, wouldn't that be the crime of disrespecting the imperial decree, disobeying the imperial will? When parents-in-law sent people to question me, those who understand would think the elders care about their children, but those who don't would think they were deliberately obstructing the imperial marriage. I responded leisurely, speaking slowly but hitting the crucial points, leaving my mother-in-law speechless. "You say I acted excessively, then you should have advised me properly. But who was it that didn't know right from wrong first?" The distinguished young master was so bewitched by a concubine he became confused. "If this spreads outside, what face would Blackwood Manor have left?" I coldly snorted. Could it be the young master is such a child that he needs someone to advise him before understanding this principle? Or is it that even with parental advice, he still wouldn't change, still infatuated with female beauty? Unfortunately, I waited all night last night, but didn't wait for a single rational person. I can only suspect that Blackwood Manor looks down on the Sterling family to do such things. As soon as the words fell, the entire hall fell silent. They thought they could suppress me just by using their elder status. I slowly raised my eyes, casually adding another sentence. "My grandfather is the great General Alexander Sterling. All my uncles have achieved great merit on distant battlefields, praised and rewarded by His Majesty. If I endure humiliation and do nothing, where would the Sterling family's dignity be? The Sterling family has long been a prestigious noble clan. What makes me have to bow my head and endure?" My mother-in-law and sisters-in-law didn't expect me to speak so boldly. On my first day in the household, I'm already using my maiden family to pressure them. Everyone was flustered, looking at each other not knowing what to do. My mother-in-law was so angry she ground her teeth, enunciating each word. "Good, very good, we've indeed married a capable daughter-in-law. In one morning, I've been told twice by the Blackwood family that I'm very capable. Looks like they're truly convinced by me." The second day after marriage was extremely busy. After paying respects to my mother-in-law and serving tea, we still had to enter the palace to give thanks. This time Marcus couldn't avoid it and had to accompany me to the palace. The emperor and empress received us in the empress's pious chambers, an extremely high honor. Marcus kept his distance from me, his expression cold, clearly showing an attitude of respectful avoidance. His Majesty obviously already knew about what happened last night, deliberately asking, "Lord Marcus, are you satisfied with the marriage I bestowed upon you?" Marcus didn't dare speak carelessly, lowering his head to answer. "The imperial marriage decree is your Majesty's grace, how would I dare be dissatisfied?" His Majesty slowly raised an eyebrow. "Oh, but listening to your tone, it seems you have some grievances." Marcus clenched his sleeve tightly, controlling his tone. "I dare not." But after hesitating a moment, he still couldn't help but grit his teeth and add, "I just didn't expect the Sterling woman to be so fierce." His Majesty suppressed a laugh, putting on a serious expression. "A daughter from a military family naturally isn't like those delicate ladies in the capital. Lord Marcus should be more tolerant in the future." Seeing His Majesty's obvious favoritism, Marcus swallowed back his words about divorce, not daring to say another word. Seeing him being so sensible, His Majesty also gave him face, pretending to speak sternly to me. Sterling woman, now that you're someone's wife, you should also restrain your temperament and properly fulfill your duties as a wife. I immediately put on an obedient expression, lowering my head to answer. Last night I was indeed a bit hasty, only thinking about quickly completing the task your Majesty entrusted to me. I momentarily didn't consider the young master's feelings. It was indeed rash. Puffed. Her Majesty the Empress, who had always been dignified and elegant, couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of tea. His Majesty's expression twitched slightly, seeming unsure whether to be angry or laugh. Naughty girl, you treat this as a military order. Alexander Sterling is skilled at leading troops in battle, but he's raised his granddaughter into a mischievous little rascal. Fine, fine, you must definitely reform in the future. Hearing His Majesty mention my grandfather, I felt a bit defiant, muttering, if grandfather had really taught me, I would have beaten him flat on the bed long ago. Both the Emperor and Empress stared wide-eyed, while Marcus instinctively backed further away from me. After chatting for a while, His Majesty finally let us take our leave. But just then, Her Majesty the Empress, who had been smiling quietly all along, suddenly spoke up. I find General Sterling's granddaughter quite interesting, and would like to keep her here to chat a bit longer. The Empress's eyes sparkled with anticipation as she looked pleadingly at His Majesty. His Majesty looked at me, then at the gentle Empress beside him. Suddenly a terrifying vision appeared in his mind, an image of his concubines being tied up in a row, forced to kneel and watch him being intimate with the Empress, right before their eyes. Just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. His Majesty immediately used a decisive tone. They're already tired today. Empress, let's save it for another day. As soon as we returned to the manor, Marcus ran straight to Vivian's courtyard without looking back. After all, the necessary rituals were completed, so I found some peace. But before I could enjoy half a day of quiet, my mother-in-law sent the old woman to deliver a message. Starting tomorrow, I must come pay respects to her every day. This is an ancestral rule passed down in the manor. Even if the heavenly king himself came, it couldn't be defied. Afraid I might cause another earth-shattering incident, the old woman specially emphasized, the old lady rises very early. Young madam absolutely must not oversleep and arrive late. I impatiently waved my hand. Understood. Tell mother I will definitely come pay respects every day. My temperament might be a bit impulsive, but it's not that I lack proper upbringing. The rules in grandfather's army are probably even stricter than this. Isn't it just paying respects? Before marrying out, I also had to pay respects to the elders at home every day. So the next day, when the sky was barely beginning to lighten, I was already at my mother-in-law's courtyard. The old woman opened the door groggily, rubbing her eyes. Upon seeing me, she was stunned. Young madam, why so early? I looked up at the sky. Not early at all. The sky is about to fully brighten. During the years following grandfather at the frontier garrison, I and my male cousins had long been accustomed to rising early. How could anyone in the military sleep until noon? The first day after marriage doesn't count. I was just too tired that night. But strangely, my mother-in-law's courtyard was still completely silent. None of my sisters-in-law had arrived yet. The old woman forced a smile, unable to hide her mockery. The old lady hasn't risen yet. I'm afraid the young madam will have to wait a while. So only I have to come early. They're trying to establish rules for me, right? They think making me stand in the cold weather is punishment. How laughable. I rotated my neck and arms to warm up, then started practicing martial arts right in the courtyard. This courtyard is spacious, perfect for warming up with a set of boxing forms. I practiced with such vigor and momentum that the wind whistled with each movement, just right for warming my body. At this moment, one of my mother-in-law's close personal maids hurriedly came out buttoning her clothes, irritably scolding, "Young madam, you're making too much noise. You've woken the old lady." I stopped my movements and calmly replied, "But last night mother instructed me to come pay respects. Etiquette cannot be abandoned." The maid ground her teeth, but one shouldn't come too early either. And certainly not practice martial arts in the courtyard. How can the old lady rest? I glanced at the pitch-dark main hall and said mildly, "It's fine. Let mother continue sleeping. I'll practice martial arts while waiting for her." The maid was so angry she choked on her words. Just then, lights suddenly came on in the main hall. My mother In-law's trembling shadow appeared at the window, and her hoarse voice transmitted out. Quickly tell her to come in. Otherwise who knows how long she'll torment us. My mother-in-law was still drowsy, her voice carrying obvious irritation. Did you come to pay respects or to anger me? Second daughter-in-law, third daughter-in-law, come here. All obediently sit quietly. Only you, I thought some traveling circus from under the bridge had wandered into the manor. Oh, all right then. I obediently nodded. The second day, when the sky hadn't yet brightened, I came knocking on the door with thunderous bangs. The old woman opened door frantically and even slipped and fell. Young madam, you've woken up the entire courtyard. I scratched my head embarrassedly. No choice, I'm too healthy. Yesterday mother-in-law said not to practice martial arts, so I'll just do some standing meditation and run a few laps around the courtyard. The third day, I practiced a sword routine. The fourth day, I simply called all my maids to practice together. They came with me as dowry to the manor, and hadn't practiced for a long time. They were getting rusty. I must say, morning practice really does refresh the spirit. But my mother-in-law was the opposite. The dark circles under her eyes were so large they looked ready to fall off. Her complexion was ghastly pale, and she nodded off drowsily even while drinking tea, looking like she'd fall asleep the moment she closed her eyes. Finally she couldn't take it anymore. Warily waving her hand, Sophia, don't come pay respects tomorrow. Go rest. I put on a serious expression. How can that be? Paying respects is an ancestral rule. How dare I break it? It's fine. I say you don't need to, so you don't need to. Listen to mother. But the other day mother also said that even the heavenly king couldn't break the rules. I don't want outsiders saying I'm disrespectful to my elders. I told you not to come means don't come. Can't you understand human speech? My mother-in-law suddenly exploded in anger, startling me. But she's angry, how can I take these words seriously? So the next day I continued coming to pay respects as usual. Not just me, the other sisters-in-law also started feeling embarrassed and didn't dare come late anymore. So we all stood yawning outside my mother-in-law's courtyard, waiting to pay respects. Elder sister-in-law, why do you rise so early? Don't you need sleep? They looked at me with eyes full of resentment. I casually made up a reason. My room is empty with no one there. Nothing to do but rise early. Unexpectedly, these words reached interested ears. That evening, Marcus was tied up and stuffed into my courtyard. Sophia Sterling, calling me here, you really went to great lengths. Marcus ground his teeth, but couldn't disobey his mother's orders. I sat before the mirror, removing my hairpins, calmly saying, if I wanted you here, would I need to go to such lengths? He suddenly remembered the wedding night when he was locked in my room, his face immediately darkening. If I really wanted him, I'd just tie him up and bring him. Why beat around the bush? After that night, Vivian avoided me from afar. Knowing I wasn't an easy mistress to provoke, she didn't dare cause trouble anymore. Recently Marcus had been staying entirely at her courtyard, making Vivian live in constant fear and anxiety. Today, hearing he had to come to my courtyard, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. You want me to consummate with you? Never in this lifetime unless I die, he roared. Titch, such fierce male chastity. I shrugged indifferently, pointing outside. Want to leave? Leave quickly. If you don't leave, you can only sleep there. Marcus stamped his feet in anger, pacing back and forth like a headless fly. Finally, with a flick of his sleeves, he dejectedly lay down on the couch in the side room. I was this rude, but he still didn't leave. Looks like my mother-in-law had given firm orders to stop me from coming to pay respects. She's really determined. Indeed, that very day, a large sign was erected outside her courtyard gate. Due to the lady's poor health, the imperial physician strictly forbids any disturbance in the early morning. Anyone who deliberately violates this is considered unfilial. How impressive. From now on, not just me but all the daughters-in-law and granddaughters in the manor were exempted from morning greetings. They were overjoyed, secretly grateful in their hearts. The young madam is truly a great benefactor. But while some rejoiced, others worried. I didn't need to go to my mother-in-law's courtyard, but martial arts practice still had to continue. As a result, the one losing sleep became Marcus. At first he angrily scolded, saying I was deliberately tormenting him. Later, seeing me ignore him, he gradually accepted his fate. Since he was already awake anyway, sleeping more would be a waste of time. He pulled out his rusty treasured sword and practiced a few moves each morning. After a while, Seeing me and the maids practicing martial arts looked interesting. He joined in for a few rounds. I kept public and private matters separate. I didn't let my dislike for him interfere with martial arts practice, so I patiently exchanged moves with him. A month passed and Marcus suddenly realized he felt much lighter. His slightly plump figure had returned to its original tall and slender scholarly appearance. Especially during the month-end polo match. He played for 2 full hours while still brimming with energy, making the ladies and young misses in the capital couldn't help but marvel. He was extremely pleased, slightly curling his lips. Looks like marrying you isn't without benefits. From that day on, without his mother forcing him, he voluntarily came to my courtyard more than half the days each month. Of course, he still only slept on the couch in the side room. In outsiders' eyes, our marital relationship was getting better and better, so someone else couldn't sit still. One day, my mother-in-law sat drinking tea and chatting with several daughters-in-law. She rarely broke precedent by calling me over. You've been in the household for several months now. As the eldest daughter-in-law and principal wife of the main branch's eldest son, you should naturally take over managing the household expenses. As she spoke, she glanced at the second daughter-in-law. I heard the previous young madam had poor health, so household management has long been handled by second daughter-in-law Caroline. Caroline hurriedly stood up. Now that elder sister-in-law has entered the household, I can finally unload this burden. Today I'll hand over the account books and storeroom keys to elder sister-in-law. She said this, but calculation flashed in her eyes that didn't escape my notice. Caroline was originally my mother-in-law's maternal niece. Logically, they should be on the same side. Now suddenly putting on this act, could there be something fishy? I pondered while observing everyone, and saw third daughter-in-law Eleanor wearing an expression of watching a good show. Before long, the steward brought a thick stack of account books and placed them before me. Looking at the densely packed writing crowding each page like fish scales, my head immediately ached. Leading troops in battle I'm good at, but looking at accounting ledgers, Caroline smiled smugly. I heard elder sister-in-law grew up at the frontier garrison. You probably haven't dealt with these mundane matters before. It's all right, I'll slowly teach you later. My mother-in-law squinted her eyes looking very satisfied. Even though you're the eldest daughter-in-law, when you don't understand something you must humbly learn. Caroline opened one account book, suddenly showing a troubled expression. I won't hide it from you, sister-in-law. Our manor looks splendid but is actually in great difficulty, running at a deficit every month. We've always relied on mother and I using our dowries to cover the losses. Now that elder sister-in-law is here, we can finally lighten the burden somewhat. I said, so they're after my dowry. I caught Eleanor revealing a mocking smile. Caroline continued chattering endlessly. I raised my hand to cut her off. Who said I don't know how to read account books? Sister, don't rush, let me look through them first before deciding. The smile on my mother-in-law's face froze. She exchanged meaningful glances with Caroline. The next morning, when they saw 4 accounting masters sitting in the study, their hands flying over abacuses, their faces immediately turned pale. You. What are you doing? I smiled gently. These are the secretaries who manage military provisions for my grandfather in the army. They've handled countless salaries and military expenses. With them here, they'll definitely help Blackwood Manor examine the accounts clearly and thoroughly, so mother and sister can rest assured. This is absolutely preposterous. These are internal matters of Blackwood Manor. How can we trouble General Sterling's military personnel? My mother-in-law was the first to lose her composure. Elder sister-in-law, if you have complaints about me, just say it directly. Why make things difficult like this and even bring in outsiders to smear our own family? Caroline wiped tears while playing the victim. I gently reassured them, Mother, second sister, please don't misunderstand. When His Majesty decreed the marriage, Grandfather specifically instructed me that the Blackwood family is a great clan, and all internal affairs must be managed by the mistress. He was afraid I, a girl who grew up at the frontier, wouldn't understand anything and would delay the household matters, so he specially assigned these 4 secretaries to help me examine the accounts. They're already family members, there's absolutely no question of outsiders harming insiders. I lightly raised my hand, showing an indenture contract. Originally, if Mother hadn't mentioned it, I thought these 4 were useless and planned to send them back to the military camp. But I didn't expect Mother to value entrusting household management to me so much. I'll definitely do my utmost, not betraying Mother's trust. My mother-in-law's face turned pale, her lips moving without producing words, her expression as if regretting slapping her own face. Behind her, Caroline angrily glared at my mother-in-law. Before the two could think of a way to turn the situation around, one secretary came before Caroline with the ledgers, respectfully saying, "Second madam, there are some entries here that don't match up. This humble one would like to invite those who previously managed the accounts to cross-check." Caroline's face immediately turned deathly pale. My mother-in-law and Caroline's overly dramatic reactions made it hard not to suspect there were problems in the accounts. Indeed, after 3 days and nights of examination, everyone was shocked to discover not only was Blackwood Manor running a severe deficit, but Caroline hadn't contributed any private funds to cover losses. On the contrary, she had secretly transferred a huge amount of assets outside. I coldly threw the account books down before her. "Second sister, how do you explain this?" Caroline collapsed to the ground, desperate, looking toward my mother-in-law, hoping she would step in to help. My mother-in-law angrily slammed the table. "Sophia, you truly see yourself above heaven, examining accounts and even daring to investigate family members. Do you intend to destroy this family?" I didn't waver, raising my eyebrows in response. "How strange. Second sister managed the household for 3 years with chaotic accounts and huge assets unaccounted for. Yet Mother doesn't worry about recovering them, but instead blames me for checking the books. This is truly incomprehensible. How could a second-branch daughter-in-law like Caroline dare embezzle a loan? If you told me my mother-in-law hadn't secretly permitted or even directly participated, I wouldn't believe it even if beaten to death." Hearing this, she immediately panicked and turned to playing the victim. "Very well, you even suspect me. I, the dignified Marchioness, being falsely accused like this by you. I don't want to live anymore. Quickly call the young master here to see how the good daughter-in-law he married is persecuting his own mother." I remained unmoved. "Mother, proving innocence isn't difficult. My people are all experts in this field. In just a few days they can investigate clearly. At that time, I'll naturally come apologize to Mother." With that, I turned to give orders. "Azure, Violet, escort the second madam back to her room. Before the investigation is clear, she's not allowed contact with anyone." I also ordered some trusted guards along with the accounting secretaries to seal the treasury and account books. Without my orders, no one is allowed near. Caroline was so frightened by my presence she didn't even dare struggle, meekly allowing herself to be escorted away. My mother-in-law collapsed into her chair, face deathly pale. "Sterling woman, you treat us like criminals to be judged." Just then, an anxious voice rang out from the doorway. "Sophia, what madness are you up to now? Daring to be so outrageous to my mother? Quickly kneel and apologize to her." I rubbed my temples, starting to feel a headache. "Is this person an idiot?" I warily waved my hand to give orders. "Azure, Pearl, help the young master out. Internal household matters, men shouldn't interfere." The 2 maids, one on each side, lifted the young master up and out. At this point his expression changed. "Sophia, not only are you unfilial to my mother, but you also want to harm your own husband," I said. All right, I understand." He felt he'd lost all face, but if he continued making a scene. Just then, a deep, steady voice rang out from the doorway. "Stop making noise. Haven't you all embarrassed yourselves enough?" The voice wasn't loud but carried immense authority. Everyone immediately fell silent. I smiled. The main character finally decided to show himself. The old Marquis slowly walked in. Though elderly, his gaze remained sharp, each step steady and firm. He went straight to the point. "Daughter-in-law, must things really be blown up this big?" I stood to bow, calmly replying, "Fag-law, forgive my frankness. But Blackwood Manor is rotting from within. If we don't investigate thoroughly, I fear our century-old foundation will be completely destroyed." I silently added in my heart, "Weren't you also part of this?" The old Marquis looked around, his gaze sweeping over the scattered account books on the floor. Finally he sighed. "All right, but family scandals shouldn't be publicized. Daughter-in-law, if this can be resolved internally, please show mercy and go easy on them." I raised my head to meet his gaze. "Father-in-law." The reason I had people guard the second sister and seal the treasury and accounts is precisely to prevent news from leaking out and being used by those with ill intentions to tarnish the manor's reputation. Rest assured, while I'm here, this Blackwood Manor will be sealed tight as a drum, without a single leak. The old Marquis looked at the guards keeping strict watch outside the door, then at the two maids still restraining the young master. He smiled bitterly. You've brought General Sterling's military governance methods into my manor. Well, fine. This mess probably only you can clean up. With that, he issued orders to all the household servants. From now on, all household matters will follow the young madam's arrangements. Anyone who disagrees or secretly passes messages will be severely punished without mercy. My mother-in-law sat dumbfounded, completely paralyzed, unable to move. The young master, seeing his father appear, immediately shrank back like a mouse seeing a cat, stammering, Father." The old Marquis glared at him. "Useless thing. Watch and learn from your daughter-in-law how to handle affairs properly." With the family head's support, my actions became even smoother. At least there wouldn't be those relying on seniority constantly coming to scold me for being unfilial. My people moved swiftly, quickly investigating all the embezzled silver. Everything had been transferred to Caroline's maiden family. Additionally, many properties were purchased under the Caroline family name but were actually controlled by the second branch. To put it bluntly, the young master was just an empty title while the manor's assets had been nearly cleaned out. And Caroline's maiden family was precisely my mother-in-law's maternal family. The wolf's ambitions were already too clear. The forces within the manor were tangled like a spider's web. The longtime villains relied on their master's power to act arrogantly, embezzling, taking bribes, forming cliques, turning the entire manor into a muddy mess. My mother-in-law and second sister were the masterminds. Since I'd promised the old Marquis to go easy, I didn't touch them. But all their trusted servants, from stewards and nannies to maids and servants, I dragged them all out, announcing each crime before everyone. Those who deserved beatings were beaten, those who should be sold were sold. To seal their mouths and prevent them from tarnishing the manor's reputation after leaving, I carefully had them escorted to the frontier to serve as hard laborers in my uncle's military camp. The vast manor immediately lost half its people. Those remaining were so frightened they trembled like quails, walking on tiptoes, wishing they could become invisible. My mother-in-law and second sister lost all their trusted people. I replaced them entirely with new servants. From then on they were just living statues, unable to cause any more waves. But I had no interest in holding power within the manor. While puzzling over where to find trustworthy people to take over household matters, third sister Eleanor suddenly came to find me. Upon seeing me, she immediately knelt down, voice trembling. "Elder sister-in-law, I previously stood by watching, not daring to get involved. I truly deserve death. I know my wrongs, please forgive me." She was quite perceptive. If she'd immediately come fawning and flattering, I would have looked down on her instead. Mother-in-law and second sister-in-law have controlled the manor for many years. Our monthly allowances were never distributed on time. We third branch have had to rely on my dowry to survive. Eleanor shed tears. Her maiden family was just an ordinary official's household. Looking at her worn dress, one could see these years hadn't been easy. One elder sister-in-law first entered the household. "It wasn't that I didn't want to warn you, but I could barely protect myself. You don't know how vicious their methods are. The previous young madam was actually ordered to 509-126 U1 killed by them." Himph, I'd already guessed this. How could a healthy person just die suddenly? If not for that group, I wouldn't have been forced to marry in as a second wife with this secondary wife title. Now elder sister-in-law has avenged this hatred for me. However sister wants to punish me, I accept willingly and wholeheartedly. Eleanor wiped her tears dry, her expression as if ready to die. I couldn't help but laugh. Am I the king of hell? Am I that frightening? The manor lacks people to manage it, and I'm unfamiliar with the capital's territory. How about third sister recommends some trustworthy people for me? Eleanor's eyes lit up. Elder sister-in-law trusts me. I smiled. Of course. As long as one acts uprightly, there's nothing that can't be trusted. But if you play tricks, I have ways to deal with it. Eleanor nodded repeatedly. Right. Elder sister-in-law, though younger than us, has such presence that even the old Marquis shows deference. Who in this household would dare play tricks before you? That would be courting death. Eleanor came crying but left cheerfully. Just after consoling third sister, young Master Marcus came barging in with a dark face. Recently he'd tried to find me many times but was always blocked at the door. I'd been too busy with countless affairs to have time to coddle his emotions. Today, finally having some free time, he immediately criticized me upon entering. Sophia, ever since you entered the household, the manor has been in chaos with chickens flying and dogs barking. Mother can't eat or sleep well now. Second sister also avoids me. What exactly do you want? I didn't answer his question, just looked at him with pity. Are you sure you're your mother's biological son? What? He was stunned, not hearing clearly. I slowly repeated, are you certain you're your mother's biological son? He turned purple with anger, jumping up to curse. Who are you cursing? You're the one who's not biological. Your whole family isn't biological. I cut him off. Then explain why your biological mother would indulge you in favoring a concubine over your wife, ruining your reputation so no one dares marry their daughters to you. Why would she transfer all the assets outside, emptying the entire manor, leaving you penniless without even a coin? You're just spinning tales here. I raised an eyebrow. Am I spinning tales? Then think carefully, what's your second brother doing now? Your terrible reputation has spread far outside. Everyone knows about the chaos in the manor. Meanwhile, he leisurely hides away, burying his head in the study every day, pretending to be diligent in his studies. His wife controls the household finances with money flowing like water. Now everyone in the capital says Lord Nicholas Blackwood is a modest gentleman with limitless prospects. It's just a pity he wasn't born at the right time, having the position of heir taken by you first. Marcus stood dazed for a long while, then muttered, impossible. Mother absolutely couldn't treat me this way. I laughed coldly. Then how did your previous wife die? Was she really angered to death by Vivian? How could a mere concubine have the guts to stand above the principal wife and act so arrogantly? Marcus's face turned deathly pale. He suddenly remembered before marrying me, his mother had once said, the Sterling family is too powerful. In the future, we mother and son will have difficulty suppressing her. Better to give her a harsh lesson from the start to avoid being controlled by her later. He also thought of another possibility. If things really went according to his mother's wishes, and no one dared marry him, he'd have no legitimate son, and this heir position would sooner or later have to be given up. He remembered his colleagues' gossip and his father's increasingly disappointed looks directed at him. He suddenly jumped up and rushed outside. Not long after, terrified screams came from Vivian's courtyard. Azure looked a bit worried. Miss, should I go check? In case there's a murder. I leisurely sipped my tea while reading. No need. He doesn't have the guts. After a while Marcus returned with a lost expression. He had just choked and beaten Vivian, forcing her to confess the whole truth. Not only did she admit to deliberately provoking and framing the previous wife, but she also exposed that mother and second sister were pulling the strings behind it all. I owe Lydia a life. I didn't expect that bitch Vivian to dare deceive me. He held his head in painful regret. I looked at him indifferently. Without his indulgence, how would Vivian dare be so arrogant? Now he regrets it and puts all the blame on a woman. Men's feelings are truly cheaper than grass. He suddenly raised his head, eyes full of confusion and despair. Why? Am I really not her biological son? But the investigation results made him even more desperate. He was indeed her biological son. Everything that happened was simply because mother favored the second son. From then on, Marcus was like he'd lost his soul, clinging to my courtyard day after day, sometimes drinking, sometimes lying on the couch in a daze. In this entire manor, only here do I feel safest. Please don't drive me away. I don't have a habit of kicking people when they're down, but I also found him really annoying. One day when he was dead drunk again, I had people carry him, couch and all, to the small room next door. There he lay moaning and groaning like a dying pig. I crossed my arms watching him, sighing in disgust. If I were your mother, I wouldn't want to care for such a stupid and weak son either. The days in the manor became increasingly boring. Mother-in-law had become a decoration. Second sister didn't dare show her face. Vivian tucked her tail between her legs, the old Marquis played dead, and the young master drowned in alcohol. The servants became even more respectful toward me, only recognizing the young madam and paying no attention to anyone else. Now with the manor's finances and personnel all in my hands, I could only look up at the sky and sigh each day. Life was so boring I couldn't stand it. Remembering my mother's instructions before getting in the wedding sedan, I suddenly felt a bit guilty. What I did was ultimately for the manor's sake, it shouldn't count as being too heavy-handed. His Majesty probably won't blame me, right? Only Eleanor was busy every day. I handed her many household affairs to handle. She was both happy and a bit puzzled. Other mistresses all hold household management power tightly. Why does elder sister-in-law hand it to me? I said warily, casually swinging my sword in practice, offendedly asking, "What do you think?" Eleanor pursed her lips in a smile, gently answering, "I think this small plot of the manor in elder sister-in-law's eyes probably isn't worth a penny." I froze. Eleanor was indeed clever, seeing through my thoughts. The clear, cloudless sky made me suddenly miss those days of galloping freely at the frontier pass, swinging my blade on horseback, drifting free. Just then, through the open window, a white dove flew in with flapping wings. I glanced at Eleanor's retreating back, then reached out to catch it. Gently turning it over, I saw a delicate message tube tied to its slender legs. My heart warmed slightly. Could the day of my return be not far off? In the alley behind the manor, a tall figure stood with his back to me. "Fourth brother," I excitedly called out loudly. That youth turned around. His face, darkened by the frontier winds, suddenly lit up with a brilliant smile, making his even white teeth stand out even more. "Sophia. Fourth brother. Is it grandfather? How are the uncles? How are eldest brother, second brother, third brother?" I was so excited I spoke incoherently. He looked me up and down, his gaze a bit strange. "Everyone's fine. They're all well. But Sophia, I'm really not used to seeing you with your hair done up wearing a dress." I looked down at myself, then grabbed my skirt and spun around, pretending, "How is it? Is your sister beautiful?" "Beautiful?" Fourth brother made a vomiting gesture. "You look at least 10 years older." "What did you say?" I angrily punched his chest hard. He laughed loudly, holding his chest and stepping back. Wonder if General Adrian Knight would like this style. My face immediately turned red. Adrian was someone I'd secretly admired at the frontier. When I heard about His Majesty's marriage decree, I didn't even dare see him and left immediately that very night. I wonder if he still remembers me. I immediately composed myself, putting fourth brother in a headlock and squeezing hard. "You damn brat, always talking nonsense. I'm the young madam now, watch your image. Let go of me. Grandfather told me to bring you dried beef. There, that's more like it. Hand it over quickly." The two of us chatted and laughed, completely unaware that in the shadows at the end of the alley, a pair of eyes was silently watching everything. As soon as I returned to the manor, I found Marcus sitting on my bed. Usually he always slept in the side room. We minded our own business like river water not mixing with well water, and I couldn't be bothered to care. "What are you doing here?" I really wasn't used to someone sitting on my bed. "This is my room. Why can't I come in?" Today he was different from usual, his tone somewhat uncomfortable. "Who did you meet today? I've never seen you that happy." So he knew. My cousin from the frontier came to the capital on official business and stopped by to see me briefly. I answered frankly. Since he was my cousin, why not invite him into the manor to sit for a while? He kept pressing. I already said he had urgent official business and could only meet briefly. I was starting to lose patience. Unexpectedly, Marcus suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Calling you Sophia, so intimately. You've been in the manor so long but never consummated with me. Is there someone else in your heart?" I forcefully shook off his hand. "Are you crazy? That's my cousin. What nonsense are you spouting?" His face flushed red as he continued pressing. "Fine, I'm talking nonsense. But what about General Adrian Knight? How many men are in your heart that I don't know about?" "Marcus, did you take the wrong medicine today? Not only eavesdropping on my conversations but making baseless accusations here. Don't forget you once said you'd rather die than consummate with me." Unexpectedly, he suddenly stood up, his arms tightening to pull me into his embrace. "I've changed my mind. We'll consummate right now." I was so angry I laughed. He says consummate and we consummate. Has he asked my fist's opinion? His face slowly approached, hot breath hitting my face. A ruthless glint flashed in my eyes. I tilted my head back slightly, then suddenly bang. A headbutt straight to his forehead. I've used this move countless times when enemies restrained my hands. If not cracking their skull, It could at least knock them unconscious for half a day. Marcus screamed in agony, staggering and falling to the ground, blood immediately gushing from his nose like a fountain. Sophia, you're too cruel. He struggled to stand but was too dizzy to stay upright. I rubbed my swollen forehead, cursing under my breath. Damn it, I must have been crazy to use this move. Truly harming the enemy by 1,000 while injuring myself by 800. The angrier I got, I immediately rushed forward and grabbed both his hands, forcefully dislocating them. Crack. The screams of agony echoed throughout the entire manor. The maids rushed in panicked, but not to protect me, rather to pull me away. Madam, master, little ancestor, please stop. If you don't stop, you'll become a widow. Marcus had always prided himself on coming from a martial family with decent martial arts. But after today, he finally understood. Normally when I practiced with the maids, we were just playing around and going easy on him. After a bout of agonized wailing, Pearl helped reset his dislocated arms. The maid said coldly, "Young master, if you court death again next time, we servants really won't be able to save you." It was then Marcus finally understood. The 4 maids grandfather sent with me weren't to protect me, but to restrain me. I knew I'd been a bit heavy-handed today. After my anger subsided, I still went to check on him. Looking at the huge swollen lump on his forehead, I felt somewhat guilty. The autumn hunt was approaching. If His Majesty and the other noble families saw this, my father wouldn't know what to say. Sophia. Unexpectedly he still hadn't given up, trying to call me. Just as I frowned, I saw him flinch and immediately change his tone. Sophia, you do care about me, don't you? I was speechless. But he continued. In this entire manner, mother favors others, father stands by watching, my brothers look down on me. The women around me all scheme against me. Only you are willing to stand up for me, help me reclaim the family assets, and even teach me. Don't you have me in your heart? I'm his second wife. He's several years older than me, but at this moment he's like a child confessing his feelings. I know you're very grateful to me, but you don't need to repay me with your body. I sincerely shook my head. What? He was stunned for a moment before understanding, then smiled bitterly. As expected of Sophia. But you and I are already husband and wife, moreover by imperial decree. We're destined to be bound together for life. Why won't you try even once? I'll be a good husband. He looked at me hopefully. I silently stood up and turned to leave. The light in his eyes slowly dimmed. Is there really nothing that can keep you here? He looked at my retreating figure, whispering to himself. Autumn officially began. His Majesty led the civil and military officials along with their families, a huge procession heading to the hunting palace. Marcus wore a soft hat that looked extremely odd, but at least it covered the huge bruise on his forehead. I sat in the same carriage with mother-in-law and second sister. The two of them avoided me like the plague, huddling in a corner whispering complaints, clearly having their own carriage, but insisting on squeezing in here. Truly small-minded country folk. I smiled without caring, comfortably occupying a row of soft seats. Mother's carriage is much more spacious than mine, still the most comfortable to sit in. As I spoke, I looked outside the carriage, eyes full of longing as I watched guards and military officers galloping on horseback. Marcus rode beside the carriage, slightly bending down to ask through the curtain in a low voice, "Sophia, do you want to ride? I deliberately brought a horse for you." I calmly refused. No need. It's been too long since I've ridden. I've forgotten how. Sitting in the carriage is still more comfortable. Marcus fell silent for a moment, disappointment showing in his eyes. Mother-in-law snorted coldly with disdain. Now the young master only has eyes for his wife, no mother anymore. Sharing a carriage with the whole family but only asking after her alone. Isn't that embarrassing? Ever since learning the truth, the relationship between Marcus and her had grown very distant. Second sister covered her mouth with a handkerchief, her voice full of mockery. Such a pity that enthusiasm met with cold stone. Miss Sterling doesn't even notice him. Marcus tightened the reins. I glanced at second sister, a smile of unclear meaning curving my lips. Her expression immediately changed, and she hurriedly shut her mouth. Midway, the procession stopped to rest. I got out to stretch my muscles. From afar, a figure on horseback galloped over. Sophia, fourth brother. Before I could say anything, Marcus somehow jumped out to block me. This must be fourth cousin. I wonder what business you have with my wife. I, Marcus, can handle it on her behalf. Fourth brother was stunned for a moment. I angrily pushed him away. Marcus, What are you doing? Fourth brother glanced over the situation, quickly understanding. A teasing glint flashed in his eyes. He pulled the reins, smiling faintly. Since the young master is protecting my sister, I won't disturb you further. He quietly winked at me, stopping my angry outburst. I decisively lowered the curtain and sat down in the carriage. The two women who had been secretly eavesdropping at the carriage door hurriedly sat up straight in panic. Sophia. Outside, Marcus's voice tried gently to coax. I'm tired, I cut him off, closing my eyes. After a long while, I finally heard his footsteps leaving. After arriving at the hunting palace camp, the hunt officially began. Horns sounded in unison, signaling trumpets rang out together, stirring the blood. Yet I still wore my brocade dress, and with the cold weather, had to add a thick fur cloak on top. Marcus saw I was itching to participate and took out a hunting outfit. Sophia, if you want to try your hand, I'll go with you. The outfit was clearly made for a woman, moreover looking like it was tailored specifically for me. I glanced at it but pulled my cloak tighter. I'm not feeling well today. Not in the mood for fun. Not feeling well. Let me call the imperial physician. No need. I told them to brew some hot tea. No need means no need. Why are you so annoying? Marcus was stunned by my scolding, still holding up the hunting outfit. Sophia, do you really hate me that much? I rolled my eyes, suddenly missing the old Marcus. When we minded our own business like river water not mixing with well water. The hunt officially began. Marcus dejectedly left the camp too. I stood outside the tent, restless and anxious, constantly watching and waiting. Mother-in-law and second sister stood behind whispering and gossiping. Look at her lost expression, who knows who she's waiting for? Truly shameless. Lost expression. Was I that obvious? In the evening the hunting party returned. Marcus spurred his horse straight back to camp. From afar he saw me standing at the entrance waiting, immediately perking up excitedly. Sophia, look what I hunted for you. He held up his prey like presenting treasure before me. However, he quickly realized my gaze didn't stop on the trophy but went past him to look behind. Fourth brother. Marcus felt a chill. He whipped around and saw fourth brother's tall, lean figure appear. He reined in his horse, the steed neighing loudly with front hooves raised high. With one hand on the reins and the other throwing something furry toward me. Sophia. This is for you. I reached out to catch it, hugging it tightly. Fourth brother maneuvered his warhorse in circles on the spot a few times, a deep smile in his eyes as he glanced at me. Not bothering with Marcus's darkened expression, he turned his horse and left. Marcus was so angry his face turned black as ink, enunciating each word. Sophia, what do you mean? Why do you only accept his things but not mine? Listen to what kind of question this is. My head ached like hammers pounding. Not wanting to entangle further with him, I reached out my hand. Fine, I'll take your things too. Happy now? Marcus heard my tone like coaxing a child and immediately pressed further. If you want mine too, then throw his away. Are you sick or something? He reached to grab it. I finally couldn't stand it anymore and kicked straight out. Bang! Marcus was kicked flying over 10 feet out of the tent entrance. Puffed. A mouthful of fresh blood spurted from his mouth, staining his chest red. I stood there dumbfounded, inwardly frustrated. I clearly didn't use that much force. At this moment mother-in-law and second sister rushed out from the neighboring tent in panic. Seeing the scene before them, their faces turned pale with fright, immediately rushing to Marcus's side. Oh heavens, how could you beat your own husband to this state? Quickly call the imperial physician. Son, mother told you already, she has no good intentions. She's trying to drive a wedge between us mother and son. Marcus looked utterly miserable, but I knew my own strength well. He was surely just too angry and coughed up blood, nothing life-threatening. So I didn't bother paying attention, turning to walk straight into the tent. Marcus suddenly roared like a madman. Sophia. For him, you'd be so cruel to me you have no heart. I snorted in exasperation, carefully pulling the tent flap closed, then hugged the wild rabbit tightly in my arms. Placing it on the table, I gently pried something from its mouth. It was a small piece of paper. I brought it close to the candlelight and opened it. On the paper were only 4 words, "Hour of the rat tonight." I immediately understood, casually feeding the paper to the flames to turn it to ash. When I stepped out of the tent, Marcus had already been carried away. Across the way, mother-in-law and second sister were sneakily staring in my direction with malicious expressions. Seeing me come out, they immediately huffed and lowered their tent flaps. At the third watch, a figure silently slipped into my tent. Fourth brother. Sophia, are you ready? All set. When do we strike? According to intelligence, they'll act tonight. Once they make their move, we'll immediately surround them. Before I could respond, we heard unusual sounds outside the tent entrance. Fourth brother reacted extremely quickly, immediately grabbing the person lurking outside the door by the collar and dragging them straight in. Moonlight shone through the tent top, illuminating Marcus's deathly pale face. Why is it you? I stared wide-eyed in shock. Marcus looked at me, his expression pained. Sophia, secretly meeting with him again, how can you treat me this way? Before I could cover his mouth, we heard commotion outside the tent. A group of people carrying torches noisily approached, led by none other than mother-in-law and second sister. Catch the adulterers. Someone is committing debauchery right under the emperor's nose in the middle of the night. Hurry. Don't let these dogs of a man and woman escape. Fourth brother ground his teeth with a crack. Damn it. I suddenly whipped my head around to glare at Marcus. He hurriedly waved his hands, frantically explaining, no, it wasn't me. They must have been secretly following and watching. The tent flap was forcefully lifted. The crowd poured in, their torches illuminating the entire tent bright as day. Mother-in-law and second sister stood smugly before the crowd, gleefully accusing. Sterling woman, secretly meeting with another man in the middle of the night, putting a huge green hat on the young master. What else is there to deny? I narrowed my eyes to assess the situation. Fortunately, besides mother-in-law and second sister, there were only household servants and guards patrolling the camp. Perhaps because it was so late, all the officials and noble ladies were already resting. The two of them, afraid we'd escape, had brought the servants to catch us first before reporting to higher-ups. Mother-in-law, second sister, you've really misunderstood. Let me explain. As I spoke, my eyes silently signaled fourth brother. Fourth brother understood. When I shifted to the doorway, blocking their escape route, he struck with lightning speed. Whoosh. I don't know what technique he used, but all the torches in the tent immediately went out. The servants hadn't even reacted when I grabbed one's hair and swung my blade to slice his throat. Puff. A stream of fresh blood sprayed directly onto mother-in-law. That person collapsed limply like a slaughtered chicken. Mother-in-law's eyes bulged. Then she fell backward to the ground, fainting on the spot. Fourth brother and I struck like lightning, killing all the remaining people without letting anyone make a sound. Second sister's mouth gaped open, frozen in place, her throat making trembling sounds. Murder, murder. Her legs went soft, urine flowing on the ground. You're killing to silence witnesses. Marcus's face was drained of all color. I forcefully tore open the outer robe of the servant who had just fallen, revealing underneath a suit of pure black armor, the military uniform of the enemy country. Both Marcus and second sister were stunned into dead silence. They had no idea the servants and guards in this hunting camp had long been infiltrated and replaced by enemy troops. Swish, swish, swish. Several fire arrows tore through the air, piercing straight through the tent top. Flames erupted violently. Outside, the sounds of killing had already begun thundering. Fourth brother gripped his blade tightly, his expression grave. We've still been exposed. No choice but to fight. I forcefully tore off my outer dress to reveal gleaming purple, gold battle armor. In an instant, we both charged outside. I bent down to pull several long spears and great sabers from under the Marchioness's carriage. 4 figures leaped from the shadows, catching the weapons I threw to them. They were none other than my 4 great maidservants. Azure, Pearl, you two protect the officials and their families. Frost, you join up with the Imperial Guards to protect His Majesty and the Crown Prince. Violet, you go south to find reinforcements and lead them here. The 4 received their orders. Each led a squad of soldiers, swiftly cutting through the air as they departed. Marcus and second sister stood as if turned to stone. No wonder you insisted on riding in the carriage. No wonder your maidservants were nowhere to be seen all day. The raging fires made my purple, gold battle armor reflect even more dazzling light. Marcus looked at me in panic, his voice hoarse. Sophia, did I ruin your plans? I looked straight into his eyes coldly. You always ruin my plans. Suppressing my killing intent, I leaped onto a horse, my gaze sharp as a blade. If anything happens to His Majesty, 10,000 deaths wouldn't atone for your crime. In the darkness, killing raged on. My long spear reflected the firelight as it tore through the air, piercing straight into the enemy ranks. The battle lasted until sunset the next day. Reinforcements had arrived, surrounding the remaining enemies who had infiltrated the camp. Only small groups were still being hunted down. Fortunately, His Majesty was safe and sound. Most officials and their families were also safe. I was covered in blood from head to toe, reining my horse to stand before the hunting palace. Many officials and families who had been rescued wanted to come thank me, but hesitated, not daring to approach. Because last night I had charged into the enemy ranks, my expression dark, venting all my frustration on them. Those far away, I pierced with one spear thrust. Those nearby, I swung my saber to slaughter like chopping vegetables. Front and back, flesh torn and blood spilled, anyone who touched me didn't survive. The sight of blood and gore spraying in the firelight, my armor and face splattered with fresh blood, made me look like an Ashura from hell. Enemy troops fled at the sight of me, while the officials and families protected behind me also trembled like quails, no one daring to speak a word. They whispered among themselves. "Is this the young madam of Blackwood Manor? Their whole family surviving until now is truly blessed with great fortune. What nonsense are you spouting? This is General Sterling's granddaughter, how could she kill indiscriminately?" Right. If not for the madam, we wouldn't have our lives to stand here." When I was killing with red eyes, fourth brother stopped me. "Sophia, stop. You've already killed them all clean. Grandfather said we need to keep some alive." Only then did I breathe heavily and stop. Fourth brother looked at me with sympathy. "Sophia, I know you're full of regret in your heart. Normally, though you may be gentle and easygoing, you've never been careless on the battlefield. No matter how cunning the enemy, you've always prepared thoroughly without exposing weaknesses. Yet this time you lost to a bunch of Blackwood people, just because of underestimating them. You didn't realize you were being followed and exposed traces, letting the enemy discover us, nearly failing by a hair's breadth. Though we achieved victory, my heart was still extremely frustrated. On the battlefield, just one moment of carelessness could cost countless lives. If there had been any mistakes today, I absolutely couldn't forgive myself. Perhaps Marcus knew this too, because from when the hunt ended until the awards ceremony, he didn't dare appear before me. In the main hall of the hunting palace, His Majesty sat in the upper seat. After some rest, he looked much less haggard than the previous days. Lord Sterling, so to speak, the old general had already detected the situation beforehand. Fourth brother bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty." Grandfather had already noticed unusual movements from the enemy country, but wasn't clear what they were planning, so he sent people back to the capital to investigate. He turned to look at me. "A year ago, after Your Majesty issued the marriage decree, Grandfather called me into his study. He has 5 sons, but only my father was frail from childhood and stayed in the capital as a civil official. My father always had heroic dreams but unfortunately lacked the constitution, so he placed all his hopes on me. When I was 3, he brought me to the frontier for Grandfather to raise alongside my male cousins. Though a daughter, I had natural talent for martial arts, a strong body, and bones suited for martial training. Grandfather loved me dearly, always keeping me by his side for careful cultivation. I was originally meant to become a general, but now I was forced to marry. I wasn't willing. But I was the only daughter of the Sterling family. If not me, then who? His Majesty trusts the Sterling family but also fears us, so he wanted to use this opportunity to give a warning by marrying me to the notorious Blackwood family as a second wife. My male cousins were furious and wanted to come to the capital to reason with His Majesty, but Grandfather stopped them. He said, "Sending Sophia to the capital is precisely for a mission. I want to place her beside His Majesty, hidden in plain sight. If there's an incident, she can coordinate from inside while we attack from outside. The marriage decree is the perfect excuse. When the mission is complete, I'll petition His Majesty for an imperial edict to let you and the Blackwood family divorce. Then you can return to continue being a general." I hesitated. Would His Majesty agree? Grandfather gently stroked the tiger tali in his hand. His Majesty will still give Grandfather this bit of face. So I didn't hesitate at all. That day I packed my belongings, bid farewell to the frontier, farewell to the battlefield, farewell to the one I loved. Following orders is a soldier's duty. My male cousins' eyes were red with reluctance as they saw me off, but in the end Grandfather whipped them back. Men who stand between heaven and earth yet aren't as decisive as a young woman. What a waste of food. After entering the capital, I lived each day like a year, having to use the Blackwood family as entertainment. Just when I was about to die of boredom, fourth brother entered the capital. He used official business as an excuse to pass messages. The enemy had begun moving. Our people were also secretly on their way, and I, hidden in the Blackwood family, was the biggest insider beside His Majesty. Grandfather had issued a death order. His Majesty's safety must be ensured. Throughout the autumn hunt, fourth brother tried many times to inform me but was always interrupted by Marcus. To avoid alerting the enemy, we had to reduce contact. Until the day of the hunt, fourth brother's subordinates discovered enemy ambush troops around the hunting grounds. But right when we were about to act, we nearly had a mishap. Fortunately, our people had also disguised themselves as His Majesty's and the officials' attendants, secretly protecting the surroundings, which prevented tragedy. Lord Sterling, His Majesty specifically called my name. I heard you bravely killed enemies last night, achieving great merit in protecting the throne. What reward would you like? Thinking of how I looked like an Ashura on the battlefield last night, I felt somewhat ashamed and quickly bowed. Protecting your Majesty is my duty. I dare not claim credit. Fourth brother beside me kept winking. I hesitated a moment then spoke up. Know that the mission is complete. I request your Majesty's permission for divorce so I can return to the frontier. His Majesty's face showed displeasure. Were you only pretending to follow the marriage decree? Do you take my imperial edict as a joke? Moreover, marriage is a major matter. You say divorce and divorce. What about the Blackwood family? What about Lord Marcus? Marcus is not worthy of my sister. Fourth brother couldn't help but speak loudly. His Majesty flew into a rage. The Grand Century, Old Manor, Lord Marcus handsome and outstanding, yet not worthy of your sister. Just as the situation grew tense, Marcus suddenly requested an audience. He bowed, his voice serious and low. Your Majesty, Miss Sterling is loyal and brave, devoted to the country, while I let personal grievances nearly cause your Majesty and the court to fall into danger. Comparing the two of us, I truly am unworthy of Miss Sterling. Everyone had just escaped death's door. After learning the truth, all were angry and indignant. If not for Lady Blackwood, still being delirious, and the second Blackwood madam too frightened to leave her room, they would have already been dragged before the court for condemnation. Fortunately, the old Marquis had been at the hunting palace with His Majesty and the senior ministers working together last night. Otherwise, the Blackwood family would have been suspected of colluding with the enemy. I heard that right after the battle ended, the old Marquis had led Marcus to kneel before the palace steps all night to plead guilty. At this moment, His Majesty's face showed interest. But now you've already repented. This sincere heart towards Sterling is also considered compensation, isn't it? So how can you say you're unworthy? Marcus silently removed the soft hat from his head. His Majesty was shocked enough to sit up straight. Lord Marcus, what is this? Marcus glanced at me, then lowered his voice. This was done by Miss Sterling when she was angry. A few days ago she even dislocated my arms. Yesterday she kicked me until I coughed blood. All in the court, both palace maids and eunuchs gasped in shock. Marcus smiled bitterly, clasping his hands in plea. Miss Sterling is indeed very good, but if we continue as husband and wife, I fear I won't live much longer. I beg your Majesty's mercy. His Majesty ground his teeth audibly, his expression as if feeling the pain for him. Sterling, you are his wife. How can you be so cruel? Is this how your grandfather taught you? I unconsciously tugged at my armor. But I really didn't use full strength. Who knew he was so weak? Fourth brother muttered. If grandfather had really taught her, he'd be bedridden by now. What? His Majesty's eyes bulged wide, while Marcus bowed his head in resignation, nodding in agreement. Just then, His Majesty lowered his head, his gaze falling on grandfather's letter, and half of the tiger Tolly placed on the table. Right now he still couldn't leave the Sterling family. If so, why not go with the flow? The bright sunlight outside the great hall made me raise my hand to shield my eyes. Chased after me. Sophia, you're free now. I nodded slightly. Thank you. He seemed still unwilling to give up. Do you really have no lingering attachment at all? I turned and walked down the long steps, leaving him standing behind. Only then did Marcus see the scene in the distance, banners fluttering, war horses neighing, 10,000 troops arranged in neat formation, their presence towering like mountains. In front, 4 great banners of blue, white, azure, and purple flew in the wind. These were the 4 great military camps under my grandfather's command. And the 4 maids who had served beside me, now wearing heavy armor, sitting on war horses, they were the 4 vanguard generals of the 4 camps. They raised their heads high, eyes resolute, waiting for my return to the ranks. On my body, the purple, gold battle armor reflected dazzling brilliance, matching perfectly with them. The armor still bore dried enemy blood, proof of my battle achievements. I flipped onto my horse, spirits soaring, spurring forward. Marcus stood frozen in place, eyes full of shock. He murmured, "Indeed, I couldn't keep you." I spurred my horse racing forward, when suddenly I saw at the front of the ranks, a youth in white clothes and silver armor, sitting on horseback. I froze. Beside me, 4th brother leaned in with a mischievous smile. Hearing he had to come rescue you, General Adrian petitioned grandfather for deployment many times. Even eldest and 2nd brothers couldn't compete with him. He led troops on forced marches of 1,000 miles, not daring to stop for even a moment. Thanks to that, we could achieve victory so quickly. My face turned red as a ripe apple. "Brother, why didn't you tell me earlier?" 4th brother laughed slyly without answering. "Afraid you'd be distracted and fall off your horse." From afar, that youth had already seen me. His face lit up bright as the dawn. "Sophia, I've brought your silver chain spear." Before the marriage decree was issued, he and I had still been discussing martial arts. The loser had to leave behind their weapon. That day I wasn't convinced and promised to fight again tomorrow. Who knew that seemingly ordinary parting would become such a long separation? Under the sunlight, he swung the long spear in his hand. The spear tip gleamed with blinding silver light, clearly polished and carefully maintained day after day. A warm undercurrent surged in my heart. I tightened the reins, galloping straight toward him. Above was the endless blue sky, in my ears the powerful howling wind. My youth, my battlefield, and my young man. I, Sophia Sterling, have returned. This story teaches us that true strength lies not in conforming to others' expectations, but in staying true to oneself. Sophia, forced into an unwanted marriage, never compromised her warrior spirit or values. She demonstrates that respect must be earned through actions, not demanded through hierarchy. Her journey reminds us that temporary sacrifices for a greater purpose don't mean abandoning our identity. Most importantly, the story shows that genuine love cannot be forced or manipulated. It flows naturally between souls who understand and accept each other completely. Freedom and self-determination are worth fighting for, even against societal pressures. And that's where our tale ends for today. Thank you so much for listening to Foxtale. If this story touched your heart, please give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next adventure. Until next time, keep the magic of stories alive in your heart. See you in the next tale.